Do not buy the Trackers Alliance The Vulture for STARFIELD. I'll repeat that. Do not buy the Trackers Alliance The Vulture for STARFIELD. Ordinarily, I would not make such a strong statement, one where I'm basically telling you what to do, what to buy, or not to buy in this particular case. And I would instead try to focus on giving you the information you need to make an informed decision for yourself. I might tell you that I don't think it's worth the price. I might suggest other alternatives. And I am going to do that here. I am going to talk about my opinions and try to give you the information you need. But this goes way beyond it not being worth the price and heads into the entire reason that I think microtransactions are bad. And yes, this is a microtransaction. Calling it a creation does not change that. But before I go into the problems I have with this overpriced official DLC, I should mention the entire new Trackers Alliance faction and questline that was added for free in a recent update. This new faction is basically a bounty hunter guild with a base in Aquila. It's got quite a few new NPCs with pretty interesting backgrounds, tons of dialogue, and even a new trader who deals in a new currency.
Red alert.
And assuming that you want to join them, you are tasked with helping another tracker take down an elusive bounty. This bounty quest is much more involved than the typical bounty quests that were already in the game, which shouldn't be a surprise as those were all procedurally generated kill quests with no actual story. There's actually quite a few steps to this quest, it has some fun dialogue, and honestly, I really did enjoy playing it. And the way this first quest played out, it made me feel like there's going to be some sort of overarching faction storyline, and I was looking forward to seeing where it went. Now I want you to remember what I just said. It's actually going to be quite important. Once you're done with this bounty, you become a full member of the Trackers Alliance, and you can keep doing bounties for them by picking them up on the board, but these are just more of the typical procedural bounties that you get in the game already. So let's move on to the next storied quest, which is a paid quest, the Vulture. This is a 700 credit or close to $7 official DLC, and it gives you one new bounty. Just one. It also gives you a new sniper rifle that's pretty good actually, and a couple of outfits, but it's still just one bounty. So how is this new quest, this new bounty? Well, actually it's pretty small, at least compared to the first one that you got for free. The dialogue is minimalistic, it's a little overwhelming, and it just doesn't feel as good as the free one, or indeed, you know, many of the other quests you get in the game. It is better than the procedural bounties, but that's not saying much because again, they're just randomly generated and don't have any story. But it honestly, this paid for quest is just not as good as many of the side quests that are already in the base game, and definitely not as good as that first Tracker Alliance bounty. Now, I've already admitted that I do not feel that this purchase was worth $7, but I do want to go into the price for this content in a little more detail. It is one quest and 3 items for $7. I also want you to consider the fact that Starfield has around 220 quests, and I'm not talking procedural quests here, I'm talking the handwritten ones, many of which are much longer and much better than the Vulture. In fact, I'd say that if I had to rank the new quest against the ones already in the game, it would not even be in the top half of the quests, so I'd rank it below average. But just for the sake of argument, let's just take all of the base game quests and average them all, and then assume that each quest has a few items associated with it and divide it up into microtransaction size pieces similar to the Vulture. Even assuming all of the gameplay and world building elements were free, which they're not, that is a $70 game divided into about 220 pieces. And if you put those numbers into your calculator and round it to 2 decimal places, you come up with a number that is nowhere near $7 bloody dollars. Basically, it's about 3 cents per quest and a few items. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the first problem with microtransactions. They're transactions, but they're not bloody micro. Micro means 1,000th, mathematically speaking, 10 to the minus 4. And even if we use more generic language, these transactions are not remotely micro. They're not even mini. They're not light. They're not even slim. $7 is an entire game on sale. In fact, right now on Steam, I can get both Morrowind and Oblivion on sale for just a little more than that. And what do you get for that $7? What do you get for that? A quest that can be completed in 15 minutes if you have rank 3 and security. That is appalling value for money. It's horse armor. Now, if they offered 15 quests with a cool overarching storyline and a bunch of set-piece locations for, say, $10, I'd still think it was a little expensive compared to the base game, but I'd feel a lot better about dropping money for that and that kind of experience. It'd be more like Automatron than horse armor, for example. But that leads me to the real problem with this microtransaction. Remember earlier when I said the way this first quest played out made me feel like there was going to be an overarching faction storyline and that I was looking forward to seeing where it went? Like I was getting a taste of something, so as to get hooked on it? Right? Now I'm sure you all see where I'm going with that analogy, and maybe some of you think I'm being a little hyperbolic by comparing it that way. But is it really out of line of me to think that way? I don't think so. Getting people invested in a story and then slowly releasing nibbles of that story and hoping that they never think about how much this is actually going to cost them when it all adds up at the end seems pretty damned underhand to me. I mean, what if it goes on for 15 quests? Is this entire quest line going to cost $98? Seriously, one small faction quest line, $98? And what if you get about 9 quests in and you realise you've spent almost $50 getting halfway through? Are you going to feel sort of almost obliged to spend the rest even if you suddenly realise it's not worth it, just to justify the cost you've already sunk into this? Now, before anyone says, well, it's your own fault, you should have known about this before you bought it. No, I totally knew. I really did suspect, having read the description of what I was buying and hearing some noises from other people who played it, that this was absolutely going to be bad value. In fact, I'll tell you now, it's actually the first creation I've ever bought for any Bethesda game. And I only did it because basically I felt obliged to at least experience the quest, just in case my assumptions and the few things that I'd heard from other people were wrong. Well, they weren't wrong. I get the idea of buyer beware, and I went into this very aware and beware, but that still does not mean I have to like what I got for that price. And I will not be buying any more of these quests. In fact, I'm not going to be buying any more official BGS creations that is not expansion pack sized, or at least, mini expansion pack, automatron sort of size, and is reasonably priced. But honestly, I feel like BGS need to fix this particular creation. They need to release an entire quest line for the Trackers Alliance, and I get the feeling that was the plan eventually. They need to make it a reasonable price, and if I'm being completely candid about this, I'm not even sure I feel okay with official BGS content being in this creation store, at least the paid stuff. I didn't like naming the old Microtransactions store stuff as creations either, in the Creation Club, but at least there it was all official BGS content that was being sold. It was a microtransaction store. And yeah, calling them anything other than a microtransaction does not alter the fact that that's what they were. Any more than it stops them being official DLC either. Season Pass, anyone? And I now fear that these creations, because this creation store now includes actual paid mods, it's going to muddy the waters even further and give camouflage to the official Bethesda Game Studios microtransactions. They're going to be less noticeable. And, you know, whilst this might confuse people, as it did with the Creation Club, to be honest, it's not going to stop people thinking that it's bad, as it didn't with the Creation Club. People know when someone is trying to sell them a bad deal, even if they can't quite find the right words to explain why. BGS does not seem to have learned the right lessons from missteps over the years. The problem with horse armor was not that the armor was not a good addition to the game. It was not that it was a bad item per se. The problem was that it just wasn't worth the price being asked for, and people felt like they were being nickel and dimed because they were. And that has not changed.